Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. My name's Elyssie Baz. I'm a Global Account Manager in the Architecture, Engineering and Construction team. And for the final time this year, I'm delighted to be back as your host for the ArcGIS Update webinar series, the Winter Edition 2025. Now, in today's webinar, we'll be taking a look at all the latest and greatest updates to make its way through to the ArcGIS system this quarter, giving you a chance to hear what's new, but most importantly, to help your organisation plan for the future. Now, alongside me today, I am joined by a fantastic lineup of presenters. So first up, we have Mark.
Hi everyone, good morning. My name is Mark Wells. I am CTO here at Esri UK.
Hi everyone, my name's Isla and I work in the product communications team.
Hey everyone, my name is Matteo. I'm a graduate consultant. I'm currently in pre-sales.
Miles, I'm a GIS consultant and I work across pre-sales and services with imagery.
And good morning everyone, my name is Julian Pilois and I am a GIS consultant specialising in data. Back to you, Alicia.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you, team. And thank you for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you have in store for us. Now, before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. Today's webinar will be recorded. So if you do need to step away at any point, please do not worry. A copy of the recording alongside the slides and the links referenced in today's presentation will be circulated in a follow-up email. Now, we won't be taking a live Q&A, but if you do have questions, please ensure you log them on Slido. And if there's any that resonate with you, again, please make sure you upvote those questions, as the most upvoted questions will be answered in a follow-up email. Now, if you haven't used Slido before, don't worry, you can get started by navigating to slido.com and entering in the event code or simply scanning the QR code on screen. Now, closer to the end of today's webinar, the poll section within Slido will become live, and this is a great opportunity to provide your feedback, not only on today's session, but also to give us some insight as to what you'd like to see in 2026. So if you've got time, please make sure you take the time to fill in the poll when it becomes available. Now, in terms of what we've got coming up today, we're going to kick things off with the headline news, a few short, sharp and sweet updates to be aware of this quarter. We'll then hear from Mark, who's going to give us his CTO update, and then we'll be joined by Isla, who's going to run us through what's new in ArcGIS Online. We'll then hand over to Miles, who's going to take us through the latest advances in imagery. Julian will then join us to give us an update in terms of what's new in Living Atlas. And last but certainly not least, we'll be joined by Matteo, who's going to tell us what's new in ArcGIS Pro 3.6. So with that, let's get started with the headline news. And first up this quarter, we have important changes when it comes to the product lifecycle for ArcGIS Enterprise version 12. Now, prior to this version, ArcGIS Enterprise offers a mature support phase. And during this phase, you can continue to talk to our support team, but you will not receive new functionality or enhancements. And critically, there are no security updates. Now, in today's digital era, when we are trying to build a robust, secure system, safeguarding our data is ultimately crucial. So at Esri, we have decided that when it comes to ArcGIS Enterprise, mature support is no longer a phase that aligns well with the industry best practices. So what are we doing? Well, we've taken this opportunity to simplify the ArcGIS Enterprise product lifecycle. From version 12, all supported versions of Enterprise will be eligible for security patches. Long-term support releases will now be supported for about 4 years. That includes general availability until the next long-term support release, which is usually around a year, followed by a fixed period of 3 years of extended support. And short-term support releases will be supported for around a year until the next release. Now, over the years at Esri, we have learned a lot from running SaaS solutions and, of course, from industry best practices around this. If you were to take a SaaS solution like ArcGIS Online, we only ever have one release at one time. It's regularly updated with new functionality. It's always patched with the latest security updates. It's always secure and it's always available for use. Now, clearly, when it comes to enterprise software, we need to be a little bit more flexible than this. But you only really need to turn on the news today to see the major brands that are making national headline news for all the wrong security reasons to really see why, as a trusted software vendor, we need to ensure that the software we ship is secure and enterprise ready throughout its life cycle. And that means providing support phases that meet these requirements. So if you would like to learn more about the product lifecycle and these changes, or even responsible for your ArcGIS enterprise system internally, I highly recommend taking a look at the latest blog article, which goes into this in a little bit more detail. Now, with version 12, we've also seen a whole host of retirements. That includes Map Viewer Classic, Story Maps Classic, and Metadata Editor Classic. Again, as a reminder, if you are using Web App Builder, it will no longer be available at version 12. So please look at alternatives such as Instant Apps or Experience Builder for similar functionality. And ArcGIS Insights is no longer available at version 12, but if you would like to keep your data prior to upgrading, we recommend taking a data export, as there could be a risk of data loss once upgraded. Now, this year we have expanded and enhanced our AI-powered assistance in ArcGIS to not only drive productivity, but streamline workflows and also ensure that you can access information quickly. So if you are looking to collect data, create apps, label, or even tell a story, then I recommend making yourself familiar with the latest AI assistance and the developments in the system. Now, with this quarter, we've seen an update to the Maps SDK, where we welcome in version 4.34 for JavaScript. There's a whole host of updates in this release, including new 3D visualization capabilities, but also editing workflows to deepen adoption of web component standards. Again, if you're perhaps a developer or even have an interest in this space, then I recommend taking a look once more at the latest blog article on this topic. And also we have an update to the how-to series. So if you joined us earlier this summer, you would have seen the announcement that we released a how-to webinar playlist. Now this set of playlists is essentially bite-sized videos to address some of the most highly requested questions that we receive. So if you ever find yourself wondering on a question or perhaps getting stuck with a particular workflow, I recommend taking a look at this playlist. Again, if there's any new topics you'd like to add, then within YouTube on the video, please ensure that you add a comment, as they're regularly reviewed and we take those into consideration when building out the topics and videos. So with that, I'd like to draw the headline news to a close and hand you over to Mark for our CTO update. So Mark, over to you.
Great, thanks very much, Alicia, and good morning, everyone. Well, today I want to talk a little bit about an area of R&D here at Esri, and that's about AI agents. Now, this might be something that sort of sounds a bit science fiction-y. For many of us, it might be an area that perhaps we don't know a lot about. But agents themselves are not new. The idea of agentic computing, agent-based computing has been around for decades, and actually the principles and the ideas behind them go much further back. But it's really based on this premise that you have these agents, these independent computer programs, and an environment that they work in, a set of rules that govern the behaviors in that environment. And from those things, the behaviors of those agents actually emerge. And we see this in nature with things like ants or bees. They're individual creatures who behave according to a relatively simple sets of instructions, like follow a scent trail or pick up food, collect nectar. But together, they actually build amazing complexity. They build nests and hives with compelling structures. They find and they share efficient paths to food. So agent-based computing isn't a new thing. But imagine now taking those agent-based scenarios that I've just described, and adding the capability of a large language model. And that's the opportunity that we have today. Suddenly, there's a whole other level of complexity in the situations that an agent can encounter and the decision making they can take. Agents can become more autonomous. They can make more complex decisions by drawing on the principles of LLMs. And today what we're seeing in the industry is a lot of talk about a future where these smart digital helpers, these AI agents, can help make decisions. They can actually take on actions, perform work, evaluate outcomes of that work, decide what to do next, take more actions, evaluate the outcomes, and so on, all based on generative AI. But one thing I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed this, but if all of this is based on large language models and the capabilities of LLMs, well, you know what? LLMs aren't actually very good at spatial reasoning. So to illustrate this, I recently asked Copilot a relatively simple question. So let me just share my screen with you for a moment. So I asked Copilot, let's just take that back a bit. I asked Copilot, I said, I'm walking from my house, and I actually gave it my whole postcode. So it had all of the information to High Wycombe Station, which is the town that I live in. I said, can you find me a coffee shop en route? And this is a relatively straightforward spatial question. And it came back with, okay, here's a bunch of coffee shops. And I looked at this, Lodoland and Le Coco and Cubic. I thought, wow, there's a load of coffee shops in Wycombe that I've never visited. And these are all on my route to the station. So let's check some of those out. And then at the end, it said, would you like a map with these plotted or a suggestion based on your preferred coffee style? So I thought, great, why don't you map those for me? Show me a map with these coffee shops. And Copilot came back with this. It says, here's your interactive map showing coffee shops along your walking route. And I was like, where's the map? So I said, I don't know if I'm being dense here, but I said, I can't see a map. Can you recreate it? And it said, here's your interactive map showing coffee shops along your walking route. It's like, I still can't see anything. So, okay, well, I need to ask it a different question. The map's not showing. Can you please show me a static map instead? See if I can get something out of it. And so it said, here's a static map showing your walking route to High Wycombe Station with nearby coffee shops marked and labelled. Ta-da! It's good, isn't it? This is a map from Copilot. And there's a few things that really struck me when I saw this. And, you know, because it's not wrong. It's plotted latitudes and longitudes. You know, it's made a graph. It's made a map. But there's a few things that struck me. One is I said, I'm walking to the station. I inferred I wanted you to decide a route that I was going to take. And what it looks like it's done is just taking a straight line. And then I also said, I want you to find a coffee shop for me en route. And it's plotted all of these coffee shops. And none of them are actually on the route. Now it's hard to get a sense of scale here because we, you know, can't internalize the lats and longs very easily, but none of them are on that green line. So I thought, you know what, I'm aware of some tools, believe it or not, that I could use to really understand how accurate Copilot's been for me. So I went off into ArcGIS Online and I built this story map. And this is my route. This is my actual route. And if I go onto Google Maps and used, you know, a standard router that would, you know, tell me where to walk, it would tell me to walk this route. So this is a sensible, well-defined walking route to the station. And you know, the way that I go is actually quite picturesque. I walk past a school and some playing fields, and then I go through this local park. And you know, usually people aren't camping there at 8 in the morning, but if they were, then they could give me breakfast. And then I get to one of my favourite places in Wycombe, which is called Tom Burt's Hill. There's a legend about this man, Tom Burt, who lived 200 or 300 years ago, dug up a pot of gold, and the hill is named after him. And one of my favourite things about this place is not only you get brilliant vistas of the town, but actually it's one of those places where you can jump off the side of the hill and you can land right in the town, as being modelled there by a couple of my kids. And do you know, in Wycombe, we've put geodesign principles at the forefront of our town, because when you jump off and you land in town, you actually, we've put the hospital right there. So when you break all your limbs from jumping off the side of the hill, we can fix you up and then send you on your way. So this is my commute to the station. And after I walk through the hospital and I've been fixed up, I will end up literally on my route, walking past a specialty coffee place called Django's, where I can get some good coffee. And if for some reason Django's isn't open or it's not available, I'm going to have to take a little bit of a detour. So it's not strictly on my route, but but I know there's a Costa just from living in Wickham. I know there's a Costa quite close. I could detour. I don't really need to, because actually right on my route again there's a cafe at the station that serves good coffee as well. So I know that they are the places that I could get coffee that I'm aware of en route. So how did Copilot do? Well, here are the plotted results from the question I asked Copilot, and I've also copied the little synopsis that it gave me with every result. This is the first one, Lodoland. It said it's just off Desborough Road. That's absolutely correct. It's likely on my walking route. Interesting. This is the second one it suggested. Apparently directly en route. These two it did quite well with. It said near the Guildhall, close to the station. That's true. And this one very close to the station. You're starting to see, I think, some of the language coming through about what it's really doing. It's good with proximity. It understands close to, nearby, but it's not en route, not strictly. And then the last couple was a Starbucks in the shopping centre, apparently right near the station. Well, near is subjective, isn't it? And this one here is, again, right near the station. Again, a subjective way to describe stuff. So one of my colleagues I spoke to and said, oh, I've got these weird results from Copilot. It doesn't seem to be very good at spatial reasoning. They said, why don't you try ChatGPT? Maybe it'll be a lot better. So I did ask the same question to ChatGPT, and actually have to zoom out to show you the results of that. So the first one ChatGPT suggested was the Apple Orchard, a charming spot in West Wickham. It absolutely is. If you go to West Wickham, you should definitely visit there. Good if your walk takes you past or through the area. Well, guess what? It doesn't. And then this one down here, or these two, are actually in a completely different village. It says might be off the direct route, depending on which way you go. But good if you don't mind a slight detour. That's 4.5 mile walking detour on my way to the station. And looks like a strong contender if you're passing through Blackwell Heath. Well, once again, not planning to. So what's really going on here? Why are these large language models not very good at spatial reasoning? Well, I think there's a couple of things, and one of them you might have kind of inferred from some of the, as I talked through some of that. One is that I think LLMs are really good at translation. When we think about how LLMs work, they are trained on the connections between words, and you can see that they infer things like close to or nearby, but they don't understand actual spatial relationships. Is this en route? Is this point inside this area? If I'd have said to it, can you count the trees in the park? It could have gone off and found a resource that told it that there were 56 trees in the park and quoted that authoritatively, but it couldn't have understood the park is this polygon, and can I actually infer and topologically that those trees are inside that space. It's not very good at that kind of stuff. So that's one reason. And I think another reason is that we know large language models are basically trained on the internet in the last 30 years. So we know that spatial relationships and spatial analysis is not really a broadly well understood topic in our society. And when we look at data scientists today and what they do, and they slice and dice data from all kinds of angles, but today spatial is not one that is well understood by data science. And we have a lot of work to do in our community and geospatial community to help that wider improvement, that wider understanding of what we do in society. And so if LLMs are trained on human consciousness of the last 30 years, well, we're going to see that human ignorance mirrored by AI as well. So what should we do? What can we do about this? Well, at Esri, brings it back to why we are starting to work on ways of exposing our capabilities in ways that agents can understand and interact with. Because like I said, agents will not only go off and do things that we ask them to, but they'll get the outputs and they'll infer what further actions to take. And so we need agentic environments. We need generative AI-based environments to be able to plug in to authoritative information and be able to draw that down. And we've got a great set of authoritative information to be able to share. So we need to develop basically ways to expose these spatial capabilities authoritatively to agents so that they can do their thinking better. And this is one of our areas of focus that I wanted to share with you at Esri. But just a word of warning about it, it's also far off. This is really an R&D phase, an R&D set of projects that we're working through. It's got lots of uncertainty along the way. Very little of it is today tangible. These things will change as the industry shifts. For example, in wider IT today, there's not yet a standard set of agentic protocols to define how these different agents will work and collaborate. So, you know, if you're old enough, think of this a bit like the VHS versus Betamax debacle. You know, these things mature over time, and wider adoption then helps shape our approaches. And if you've no idea what I'm talking about with VHS and Betamax, well, congratulations, you've got eternal youth on your side, and feel free to go and ask ChatGPT about video format wars of the 1980s. And with that, Alicia, back to you.
Thank you, Mark. I will not say whether I do recall or don't recall, because I think that will give my age away. But with that, we'll move on. And next up, I'd like to welcome Isla, who's going to tell us what's new in ArcGIS Online. So Isla, over to you.
Thanks, Alicia. Just checking you can see my screen.
I can indeed.
Fab. Thank you very much. Okay, so over the next few minutes, we'll have a look at the latest updates across ArcGIS Online. Now, I will be cherry picking these, so if you want the full list of what's been included, I recommend you check out the What's New documentation and blog. If you're also interested in a particular product, I would recommend looking at the What's New blogs for these specifically as well, and they'll be linked on each slide for you to check out later. But without further ado, let's get stuck in. So the main updates for this release include new features in the ArcGIS Map Viewer and Scene Viewer, and ArcGIS Instant Apps, Experience Builder, Dashboards, Story Maps, and Notebooks apps. But let's start with ArcGIS Map Viewer. So Alicia mentioned about the AI assistants across the ArcGIS Online platform earlier, and I can show you one of these in action now. The Arcade Assistant was introduced in the June 2025 update, and it helps you write lightweight scripts that extend the ArcGIS Online experience and can be used to help you write arcade expressions for pop-ups, labels, and styling layers from prompts that you give in natural language. With the latest ArcGIS Online update, you can now use the assistant to generate arcade expressions for when you are calculating field values in the map viewer. So you can see here the AI assistant is generating me some code to calculate the percentage for one of the fields in my pop-ups. And this is quite useful because I don't have to do anything to the underlying data structure. Once we have this code, I can embed it with a button into my script where I could edit it further. And when I click done, it's now applied to the pop-up. Speaking of pop-ups, these can now be configured to work with tile layers when you select a feature layer for it to be associated with. This means the feature layers will provide the attribute to populate the pop-up with, and the full capabilities of pop-ups, including arcade and attachments, are available through this method. On the symbology side, there have been updates as well. For labeling, you now have more control and flexibility over closely placed labels. Now, when labels would overlap, you can specify their order of priority through dragging and dropping the label classes. There have also been several updates for line symbology. Symbol offsets means you can spread out line symbology that overlap so that you can show them separately. And gradient symbology options help you show line data that has a directional element in a more dynamic way as well. Finally, you can also apply animated symbology to lines and polygons, as well as just points. Finding your data in your web maps is now also easier, as you can see your folders when you click the Add Layer button. You can also add content from your ArcGIS hub sites directly to your maps. And finally, we do have a large selection of app builders available to us, but we also now have an additional option for sharing web maps. For situations where sharing a custom map may not be appropriate, you can also share a customized view of your web map to others. Using the Create Custom Link button, we can share either a shortened or a full URL, and we can control the look of the map, including its legend, map summary, and bookmarks. If you choose this option, or if you need to see who is using the map viewer more generally, you can now access the map viewer usage reports from the Administrator Activity Reports page in ArcGIS Online. These reports use the map viewer's unique client ID to show when the map viewer has been logged in specifically to be used. In ArcGIS Scene Viewer, a new symbology style is now available called Flow Style, and this allows you to view data sets with direction and magnitude, such as ocean currents or wind currents, in dynamic ways, while ensuring they still have spatial accuracy. But that's not all for Scene Viewer, though. As with Map Viewer, the Arcade Assistant is available and can be used to display key information in various forms, including charts. And you can also now use custom web analysis tools that are published and hosted in your ArcGIS Online organization in Scene Viewer. These allow you to perform geoprocessing analysis in Scene Viewer, such as buffering or calculating walking distance, meaning you won't need to leave and revisit Scene Viewer if you need to find these insights. For ArcGIS Instant Apps, I am actually going to show you these quickly live. So if I switch to my browser, the attachment viewer template, which allows you to choose, show videos, photos, and PDF attachments, has a new look. So you can now see a large gallery of attachments that relate to the features in your current map extent. So if I show you quickly here, you can select a feature in the map to see the attachments that are associated with it. But I can also select an image in the gallery to see the pop-up information. We also have a new template called the gallery template, which is currently in beta. And this allows you to filter a collection of items and explore them in one place. So again, if I show you this quickly now, if I select a category of web maps to choose, I can then open it directly in the template. Across the board, we now have updates to introduction windows that give you further flexibility for dismissal options. So if I show you this on now, you can now allow your end users to either permanently dismiss your introduction windows, or you can require dismissal each time, or you can require end users to agree to some text that you can edit before they can dismiss it. Your cover pages can now be displayed in multiple languages through the language switcher. So you just need to turn this on to start setting this up, and you can apply it to your cover pages and see which languages that you can choose from here. Going back to our slides, in ArcGIS dashboards, if you're using temporal data, you can now use the slider option as a date selector that gives you a draggable interactive option. This is particularly useful for dashboards that show data analysis or records over time. You can now see and manage all of your dashboard data sources, such as layers, maps, and data expressions, with a new data source and dependency management capability. And this gives you quick access to find and fix broken data sources by reconnecting them to valid ones. And finally, in time series charts, you can now specify the spacing of the date access labels with 3 options of compact, default, and spacious. And this gives you more flexibility for the configuration of your graphs and improves their readability. In ArcGIS Experience Builder, there have been major updates to the theme system to help give you a consistent branding experience. Updates have been made to color selection, where colors are now sorted and labeled as primary and secondary brand colors, and also functional colors as well. You can now also use Google Fonts to extend the typography customization options in your app by copying the Google Font URL and pasting it into the Add Google Fonts window in your theme settings. In terms of widgets, you can now create apps that cater to multiple audiences with a new sign-in widget that allows users to sign into the ArcGIS Online account and access additional content and be redirected to specific views, windows, or external URLs. There's also a new image collection explorer widget that allows you to view, filter, and select individual images that match your criteria from a dynamic image layer. You can then use these images to create new layers in your maps for further analysis. In ArcGIS Story Maps, you can now include 360-degree panoramic images in your story maps that allow end users to explore locations in a new immersive way. For story maps that you wish to be available in multiple languages, you can now access translations from a new Translations tab in your story sessions, allowing you to link story maps with different translations together. Your end users can click a language icon in the finished story to access the alternative language. You can now also make sure that all your story map items are functional and fully usable through a new Check Items feature. And this checks all of your items at once for missing links and issues with media items. And this saves you a lot of time and effort with manually checking on your story maps to make sure there are no issues. Finally, ArcGIS Notebooks gives you a Python scripting experience that helps you increase collaboration and build powerful data science analysis workflows in projects called notebooks. You can now create notebooks using templates, where you can pick from a variety of pre-created notebooks based on predefined categories for a quicker and low-code experience. And this gives you a head start with an example that you can then adapt to suit your needs. So I'm just showing this here in the video. You can see all the code that is available for me then to adapt. But that's been a quick tour from me on the latest updates across ArcGIS Online with the October release. Back over to you, Alicia.
Thank you, Isla. I'm a big fan of the immersive 360 experience in Story Map. So if you haven't had a chance to, do take a look and have a play. And with that, we're now going to move on and take a look at the latest advances in imagery. So Miles, over to you.
Yeah, let me just share my screen. Brilliant, all come through. So yeah, I'm going to walk you through the latest advancements of imagery in ArcGIS. And just before I dive into the new parts that have been released, I just want to confirm that ArcGIS is a comprehensive imagery system. It encapsulates reality mapping, analysis, visualization, content, and data management all in one place. But I'm just going to focus on what's new currently over 2025, and there's a lot of it. So I will do a very quick whistle-stop tour. So firstly, in the web applications, we'll start with ArcGIS Content Store. Now that's been around now for about a year with satellite imagery, but a recent addition is the aerial imagery, which is provided by Vexel and EagleView. So that's another form of content you can purchase. And now we can also perform raster analysis more efficiently on certain Living Atlas imagery layers, and this can be performed at a large scale. So this includes Landsat Level 2, NAIP, Sentinel-1, Sentinel-2, land use and land cover time series, and Level 2A. So that's really good for your large-scale analysis, whereas this was limited before. On ArcGIS Online Map Viewer, there are a couple more updated imagery capabilities. So first off, there's dynamic range adjustment in Map Viewer. So this is really helpful for trying to basically better visualize your imagery, enhance where there's shadow, or when you load it in, you can change the dynamics there. We also have an enhanced map imagery filter. So if you want to filter by cloud cover, for example, so if you want cloud cover with less than 10% in your scene, you can filter by that as well. And there are other options in your conditions as well. So that's really helpful for going through large image collections and pulling out the images that matter to you. The next one in ArcGIS Online, so now you can currently call GPU resources on demand, removing the need for heavy GPU infrastructure on premises. So this is brilliant for deep learning models, and you can connect into them into the Living Atlas, or you can upload your own that you've created. But this basically democratizes the ability to use GeoAI on demand. And then another one is registering preset imagery styles in Map Viewer. So if you've got multi-band imagery and you know which are the specific RGB bands for rendering, you can create your style and have it visualized in the way you want it. So it could be natural color or near infrared, whatever it is, but they can be styled that way. And a new one in ArcGIS Online is hyperspectral capabilities. So here's just a nice example of loading in some Sentinel imagery. And here you can see we've got over about 250 bands. So it goes all the way down and you can select which bands you want. So here I'm just going to choose a different color rendering option. So just choose 3 bands to visualize, and you can create these templates as well. And moving on. So we've also got Experience Builder. So there's some new imagery-centric widgets. So this involves image collection, Explorer, processing templates, and image display order. So I've got a little visualization here. So I've loaded in some Sentinel-2, and we can go through and see all the different scenes. So I'm just going to navigate to one down in the south of France on the border with Italy here over the Alps. So we'll jump to it, and it will render nice and quickly. And we can get a nice view of what it looks like, what's in the scene. But let's say we're not happy with the processing template for natural color. We can switch to ones that are pre-built. So agriculture, we've got color infrared or geology. We've got a whole host here that you can quickly render without having to do complex analysis in the background. And finally, urban for visualization, quite a pretty color. But we've only got one image on here at the moment, but let's say we've got multiple in a mosaic. We can basically change the image display order. So we can choose mosaicing method where it's locking the raster, or the most recent is on top. And we can change all those things to help sift through large catalogs of imagery. But then we've got a lot more hyperspectral capabilities in ArcGIS Pro now as well. So we've got the USGS spectral libraries, so we can export spectral profiles from the root ASCII folder. So you can also filter by specific sensors or materials that you're looking for. So it gives a spectral signature for a certain item. So if you're looking for a certain mineral, you can pull it out and use it for spectral unmixing workflows. But let's say one of the signatures you're after isn't included there. We can create your own spectral profiles from the imagery, and you can save it to your library, and these are for future analysis down the line. But more recently, we've also added spectral signatures, but they're interactive ones. So rather than creating loads of test ones to find the actual spectral signature you're after, you can just move your mouse cursor and find it without having to save it. And once you've found it, you can make a nice, concise spectral library going forward, removing the need for lots of different tests. And then we've got detect with target detection. So using your spectral library guides, we can start to just pull out certain minerals, for example, that have a specific spectral profile. So here we've got an example pulling out hemerite or pyrite or other different minerals as well. And this is all guided by the target detection wizard. And additionally, to that, we've got spectral unmixing workflows. So if you've got multiple mixed pixels, so here's a nice example of a map where we're covering shrubs, trees, and grassland. And the linear spectral unmixing tool now supports the spectral libraries and streamlines this process going forward. And the important thing is it improves consistency across projects. Synthetic aperture radar, also known as SAR, there's been some updates there as well. So we've got some INSAR coherence workflows. So coherence workflow, we've got two multi-temporal coherence, so known as MCT, and we've got the 4-image version as well. We also have a feature detection wizard, which provides guided workflows, and you can perform detection. So here I've got a nice example using SAR, so level 1 data, and pulling out illegal fishing boats from that. And that's all streamlined and made a lot easier with the detection wizard. And finally, we have the differential interferometric synthetic aperture radar, quite a mouthful. But this is a new workflow that can be performed on Sentinel-1 SAR data, and this is all looking at different elevations and stuff. And finally, Gaussian splats. This has been in whispering for quite a long time now, but it's a new, highly realistic 3D layer. And it's generated by all our reality mapping experiences currently. And on the right-hand side is just a nice example. And integrating this into ArcGIS, so available now as a couple of days ago, we've got Drone to Map, we've got Reality for ArcGIS Pro, and Reality Studio. They can all currently produce Gaussian splats. But that is coming to SiteScan for ArcGIS in Q1 of 2026, so just round the corner. But at the moment, we can only visualize the Gaussian splats in the products that you can create the Gaussian splats, but this is coming to ArcGIS Online in late 2025, so again, around the corner, whereas Enterprise follows a little bit later in 2026 onwards. And I thought I'd also make a mention that we've now got ArcGIS Reality Server, which is in a beta phase, but this is for Enterprise 12.0, and this is for your large-scale enterprise reality mapping. And I thought I'd just finish off with a couple of nice examples of Gaussian splats. Now, these all look like they're still photos. They're actually Gaussian splats that have been rendered from multiple drone images. So you've got a nice image of cars, solar panels, but you can really see the detail in the vegetation and the wire meshing. And that's the really the big selling point of Gaussian splats over a mesh, which might not capture all this detail. And then finally, I've got a video to finish off with. If I can just find my mouse. Here we are. So here's another Gaussian splats, and it gives us the ability to look through glass and provide that enhanced visualization. And with that, I'll hand back to Alicia. Thank you.
Thank you, Miles, and some really impressive imagery there. So I have no doubt there'll be lots of questions on this functionality, not only now, but also going forward. So with that, I'd now like to hand over to Julian, and Julian's going to tell us what's new in Living Atlas. So Julian, over to you.
Thanks, Alicia. Please do let me know if my screen is coming through clearly there.
It is indeed.
Perfect, thank you. So having access to accurate, authoritative, and up-to-date geospatial information is important to all GIS users, regardless of which industry you work in or problems that you're solving. And here at Esri, we want to make geospatial data as accessible as possible to ultimately save you time and effort so that you can focus on higher value work. And we do this by curating the ArcGIS Living Atlas, the world's foremost collection of geographic information from around the globe. In there, you can find over 10,000 maps, apps, layers, and deep learning models contributed by Esri, our partners, and the wider GIS community, from base maps and imagery to boundaries and demographic data. And I can guarantee you there's at least one data set which can help with the work that you do. The Living Atlas is constantly growing and evolving, and today I'd like to share my top 3 new additions from the last quarter. But before I do so, I just wanted to highlight that you can access the Living Atlas across the ArcGIS platform, from ArcGIS Online to ArcGIS Enterprise, ArcGIS Pro, and many geo-enabled applications across the platform. However, I find the Living Atlas website is a great place to start exploring. So let's jump over there. Cool, so here I am on the Living Atlas website, and I can see some currently featured content, but I would like to explore the latest additions to the UK. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click that Browse tab, I'm going to click on Regions, filter by United Kingdom, and sort by most recent. And oh wow, this has changed since 5 minutes ago. That is crazy. But the first data set or collection of data sets I'd actually like to feature are some which are contributed by the Scottish Improvement Service. And I'm just going to jump to this tab here where I've filtered them out. The Scottish Improvement Service, in brief, they provide leadership to local government across Scotland, helping to build capability, transform decision making, and deliver shared service applications and platforms. And one of the ways that they're doing this is by collating and contributing core geographic data for all of Scotland. And yeah, as I mentioned, they're adding layers day by day at the moment. There were 5 a week ago. I think now there's, but I guess there's 16 now we can see. So they're constantly being added to. And just to give you a flavor of what sort of data sets they're adding to, yeah, you can see here alcohol prohibited areas, conservation areas, air quality management areas, core sort of local government and authoritative layers. So they're evolving day by day, and if you operate in Scotland, I would highly encourage you to check them out. The second data set I'd like to bring to your attention is the 2025 Index of Multiple Deprivations, or IMD. And this data set is published by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, a mouthful there, and covers all of England, with Wales and Scotland to follow upon completion. And it's broken down by LSOAs, or lower level super output areas. And what it shows essentially is both a decile from 1 to 10 and a rank from the most to least deprived communities across England. And this information is derived from a wide variety of sources, and I see it as a key layer many of you would gain value from to help identify which parts of your communities require the most assistance. And the third and final feature I'd like to share with you today is not actually a layer, but it's actually a new capability, the Evaluate and Nominate app. The Evaluate and Nominate app is a tool which allows you to evaluate your ArcGIS Online content and assess how accessible and discoverable it is within your organization, or if you're sharing data publicly. And you can get to it again within the Living Atlas website by clicking the Contribute tab. As you can see, I am logged in with my ArcGIS Online user, and if I scroll down, I can see the layers in my, or the items, I should say, in my ArcGIS Online organization. And you can also see that my metadata has quite a long way to go. So let's evaluate this layer here, DRC_TT, whatever that means. And if I click Evaluate and Nominate, I can see a score out of 100 and a list of ways in which I can improve my metadata. If I jump to my map very quickly, I can actually see that these are telco towers scattered across the Democratic Republic of Congo, surprisingly. And so if I return to the tool, I can click through each of these sections and edit them accordingly. So let's correct my title name to better reflect what the data is actually showing. Telco tower points. And upon hitting save, that's updating my item details in ArcGIS Online, and it's also improving my score, which is ultimately making my data more robust, accessible, and discoverable by those I've shared it with. I've covered the evaluation side of the tool, but where the nominate comes in is that should your dataset be of significance to others in the GIS community, we'd love you to nominate your datasets to the Living Atlas to become part of this ever-evolving data portal. And I think if I click here, you can see there's the Nominate to Living Atlas button there. Just like to finish with a couple calls to action if I jump back to my slides. So after the webinar, I highly recommend you go and explore the Living Atlas and see what new additions have been added. Again, if you're a custodian of datasets which you feel would help the GIS community, please do contribute your datasets to the Living Atlas. And additionally, if there are open datasets which aren't in the Living Atlas, but you'd like to see them in there, please do reach out to us at datacurator@esri.com. And finally, just a reminder that here at Esri UK, we also partner with an extensive list of premium data providers. And so we're here to support you with both your GIS and your data needs. That's all from me. Back to you, Alyssa.
Thank you, Julian. It's great to see just how frequently the Living Atlas catalogue is being updated. So again, if you do have any questions on both Living Atlas or premium data, do get in touch. Okay, and next we have Matteo. So Matteo, tell us what's new in ArcGIS Pro 3.6. So Matteo, if you're there.
Apologies for that. I think I was on mute. Can you? Okay.
I can
Thanks,
hear you now,
Alicia.
Matteo.
Cool. And can you see my screen okay?
I can. It's come through perfectly.
Fantastic. Sorry for that slight delay there. So just a little preview for this session on what's new in Pro 3.6. In the next few minutes, I'll take you through highlights of the update and then give you a live demo of the new capabilities. But just to note, there have been a lot of changes with this update and we won't have time to cover everything. So please do have a look at the documentation for a full picture of all the changes that have taken place. So first up, I just wanted to say that your contributions as a user base have been and continue to shape how our products evolve. And this is of course true with ArcGIS Pro. So with over 1,000 ideas in the past year, many of your suggestions have been implemented in recent updates, including 60 in this one, or over 60. Examples include the geodatabase compare schema tool enhancements that we'll talk about in a second. But I just wanted to call this out and say, please do keep going back to the ideas page to contribute, as Esri Inc. do review ideas with a lot of traction. With that, let's have a look at some of the highlights of the update. In terms of broader picture stuff, you'll be pleased to hear that it's addressed 25% more bug fixes than in 3.5. And if you're curious, you can find a full list of issues addressed online. Additionally, on Startup, Pro now checks for software announcements that are related to your installed version of the product, so you'll only see things relevant to you. Announcements might include upcoming changes, deprecation notices, and critical software defects. If an announcement is critical, you won't miss it because it will keep coming up on Startup until you dismiss it. Looking at the exciting stuff, so the new capabilities, there are quite a few that I'd like to touch on. So firstly, we can now display time values across multiple time-enabled layers relative to just one chosen time zone for a map. And I'll show you more of this in our demo. Inspired by the data reviewer in ArcMap, the geodatabase schema report tool has also been enhanced to provide a dynamic HTML output with 4 different color indicators. So we've gone from blue for updates to green for additions and red for deletions. And you can use these to navigate your changes dynamically. So especially if you're managing complex geodatabases or dealing with versioning, this allows you to explore modification in a lot more detail than you previously could. Next, as a feature that is in beta currently, the Google Photorealistic Base Map can now be applied in both local and global scenes. It comprises a single Google Mesh elevation layer that provides a textured digital surface model, and it covers the whole planet. You don't need to code or process anything, it's just ready to go. You will have to enable it as a feature in your ArcGIS Online settings. Once you do, you can add it in just like any other base map. And there's a little Easter egg there for you. That's a little glass building I'm giving you this presentation from. So say hi if you want. In a similar vein, we just heard Miles talk to us about Gaussian splat layers, and you can now add these into 3D scenes if you want to provide that high-level, realistic visualization of complex geometry that Miles just showed us. Lastly, we now have also a suitability model comparison tool to allow you to statistically explore the differences in interpretation that two models can give you, from exploring differences in input parameters to investigating where models both have high similarity or high difference. And you've got a range of statistics that you can choose to generate to compare different scenarios. Looking at some of the productivity changes that 3.6 brought, we've got quite a few in here that make your existing workflows easier. So for instance, you now have a field calculation toolbar within the attribute table, so that if you have simple calculations you need to do quickly, you don't have to open the entire interface, but you can still have support for your Arcade, Python, or SQL expressions. Additionally, when running any geoprocessing tool, you now also have the option to specify whether to run it on a geoprocessing thread for tools that require longer to complete, or a foreground thread if you want to smash out those shorter runtimes. For workflows involving scripting, I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear that the Arcade editor has been improved to include code completion, inline warning hints, and formatting capabilities. Next, our model builder has also been revamped to match the user experience of ArcGIS Online, with rounded rectangles for variables and a cleaner color palette. So now where variables in a model are not valid, they're grayed out like we saw just a second ago in the video, highlighting where your workflows needs attention. And once your model is running, you now receive excellent visual feedback on which tools have run successfully, are running, or have failed, as indicated by green ticks and red crosses. Compared to the interface in 3.5, this makes troubleshooting much easier and brings a modern feel to the tool. As a note regarding your existing models, they will continue to open and validate with its new look, and custom layouts should be preserved with some difference in spacing. One exception to this might be if you have a custom layout with lots of nested groups, and some manual placing might be required in that case. Now moving on to some live demo, I hope you'll forgive me, but I'll give this one a little bit of a holiday feel. We're going to see how Santa can use ArcGIS Pro 3.6 to deliver a whiteout Christmas. So if I just open Pro here, you'll see Julian just talked to us about the index multiple deprivation, so I thought I'd use it to demo how your ability to query data interactively for both exploration and visualization has been improved. So let's say Santa is doing some data-driven analysis to augment the naughty or nice list, and he wants to incorporate some fairness and joy where it's needed most. Well, in Pro 3.5, we saw the ability to tick on and off layers, categories in your layer visually. We can now take this further by selecting those outright. So if I right-click one of my categories in my contents pane, I have the option to select features in this class. Additionally, I can add features to the existing selection or remove them if I wish. Alternatively, if you use the select by attribute or select by location tools, and we open a little interface here, once you apply a selection, you now have the option to export it directly to a geodatabase or a folder. So for those of you using these selection tools to start off your analysis workflows, hopefully this is a new feature you can make use of. I'll clear that for now, and I'll show you a little bit about working with time. So let me tell you, it's tough for Santa to plan across time zones. No one knows better, except maybe if you work in logistics. And let's say Santa wants to track off some drop-off times to a few major distribution centers. At the moment, I've got 3 layers here, and my London data, if I just open it up, it has a local time zone of GMT, and my New York data is set in Eastern time. So at the moment, even though in the original data, their local times are both 12 o'clock, I'll show you how you can change this for display purposes. So I've got in Lapland, Finland, Santa's HQ, because that's the ancestral home of St. Nick. And also you can't get time zones in North Pole, which is a bit of a bummer, but there we have it. But if I wanted to display all of my data relative to that time zone, which is GMT +2, I can head over to my time tab in the ribbon, and you'll see my time zone settings here have changed slightly, and I can select a time zone and then display the values relative to this. You'll notice in my pop-ups, my London displays changed from 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock, so it's gained 2 hours. And likewise in New York, we've gained 7 hours. The reason for this is that if an event were to happen at 12 o'clock in London time, the equivalent in Helsinki would be 2 o'clock. And if I just open my attribute table, I'll just show you that this is always reflected within the underlying data. So if I hover over my date time field, you'll see that it gives me my original time zone, GMT ±5, and my display time zone, GMT +2. So these displays apply to reports, pop-ups, and attribute tables, but the underlying data always remains the same. So I know a lot of us don't work in time zones, but for those of you who do, I thought I'd highlight this because it could be a really useful tool for logistical planning or event response and coordination. I just want to touch on the Google Base Map last of all, because it's quite exciting. So we've got my scene here, and we can immediately start to make some 3D assumptions with real world context. So if, for example, I want to help Santa measure out his streets for some nifty sleigh landings, I can do this just like I could before, also have that real world context. And there you go, it's going to scale some walls as well. However, we can also start to implement our 3D analysis tools. So if I want to save some elves some rooftop reconnaissance, I can come to my exploratory 3D analysis toolbox, select some view sheds that we can look at. And I can start to see whether Santa needs to be really sneaky or whether he's okay. So that was really a whistle-stop tour of Pro 3.6. And with that, I'll hand you back over to Alicia.
Thank you, Matteo, and definitely no need to apologise, as it's never too early to talk about the festive season that is almost upon us. Okay, so before we wrap today's webinar up, there's just a few other updates. First up, we have the Scottish Conference recordings. So if you didn't get an opportunity to attend in person, or perhaps you'd like to catch up on some of the sessions, then you can do so by navigating to our website or simply scanning the QR code on screen. And if you are working a little longer this year, then the good news is that you do not need to wait too long until we are back with another webinar. So on the 11th of December, the team are running a webinar on creating reports in ArcGIS. So if you're looking to share data or gain greater insight into that data, this is a fantastic webinar to sign up to and reserve a seat. As a final reminder, if you haven't already done so, please make sure you log your questions on Slido, you upvote any that resonate with you, and one final ask, if you can, please take the time to fill in the poll section. Now, all that's left for me to say is a huge thank you to today's presenters, but also all of our presenters who have taken part in the 2025 webinar series, and a special mention to our organisers behind the scenes who have supported each of the quarterly updates. So from the Esri UK and Esri Ireland family, we'd like to wish you all a very happy holidays when you get to it, and we can't wait to see you back in 2026. Bye for now.